All right, we're out here at the garden again, actually in the nice warm greenhouse today. We're going to talk a little bit about something that you definitely don't want to do right now, but you definitely want to do it a little bit later. We're going to talk a little bit about planting tomatoes and peppers and things like that. Well, actually, we're going to talk about tomatoes today because it's a lot different than peppers. But we definitely don't want to see these going in the ground until definitely mid-May or a little bit later. We want to make sure there's zero chance of frost coming, and which is hard to do. But so we're just going to talk a little bit about it first of all. So we've got a couple tomatoes here, a couple tomato plants. This one is actually interesting. There's a difference in leaves. They call this a potato leaf because tomatoes are related to potatoes, but this is they call potato leaf. You see a lot of the heirlooms are like this, and then this is just your kind of normal leaf potato, which is a little bit, or normal leaf tomato, which is a little bit different. So there's just a couple different things. There's also a couple different kinds. If you haven't purchased your tomatoes yet, there's a couple different kinds of tomatoes that you're going to want to look at. When I say kinds, I mean there's a determinate tomato and an indeterminate, and then sometimes you'll see semi-determinate. So a determinate tomato would be a tomato that is going to have a lifespan. It's going to grow. It's going to put on all of its tomatoes basically within a 2-week period, and then it's going to be done. People use these for sauces and things like that because they want to harvest them all at the same time. They want to can them and they want to be done with it. It's what companies use that use it for things like tomato paste and ketchup and that. Then there's an indeterminate, which is one that will continue to grow. So this one's going to fizzle out maybe toward the end of the summer. It's going to have its tomatoes. It's going to be over with. Then you're going to have an indeterminate, which is going to continue to grow until the first frost of the season, which is in October. So just something to know when you're looking for tomatoes. If you're looking for something that's going to stay kind of bushy and not get too tall, go for an indeterminate. And you might have to stage some of them in, so that they come due at different times. But if you're looking for something that's going to be a bush type plant, you're going to do that because they don't grow. An indeterminate can get, in places like California, 10 foot tall because they have a long season. We have them here 8 foot tall all the time. So now we're going to talk a little bit about planting them. So we've developed a good root system. I think we've talked in some of our other things about how you want to water through the bottom. So when you water through the bottom, these roots are going looking for water all the time once it starts to dry out, and they grow these beautiful root systems. I'm just going to tear these off. It'll actually enhance the plant to grow more. So I'm going to pull this out. I like to do it from the bottom, some taps, and pull this out. You look, this has got a beautiful root system in it. And then that's actually not the one I'm going to plant. Oops. I'm going to plant this one here because this is one we chose. And I'm going to pull that baby out. And we're going to bury these deep. So you want to bury at least 50% of your plant in the ground. And actually you want to start with a plant that's maybe this tall or a little bit taller, 8 to 12 inches tall. You get big plants and they become challenges. So we're going to show you 2 different ways to plant these. So this is a tomato. So the first thing you're going to do, if I can find my scissors, is you want to clip some of these bottom leaves off because this is all going underground. We talked about this before. There's all these little furry things on here. Well, these are all root hairs, and so anything that goes underground is going to grow new root hairs. So we put a hole in here already. We're going to sink this in, and we're going to now I will say this, normally although our soil's really moist here right now, normally what we would do with a tomato plant is I'll take a watering can and I'll pour some water in the hole once I've dug it and let it settle in. Also, another really good thing to put in the hole is just a small amount of worm castings. You could also put a little bit of something with calcium in it. Now, so this is what you'll hear I guess, old wives' tales, but they do work. I mean, some people put a Tums in the bottom of the hole. That's calcium. It's pure calcium, so that's what this needs to have not blossom end rot. Some people will put powdered milk down in there. Which is also just calcium. So what you're doing is giving some calcium to plant. So you can put little worm castings, maybe a Tums down in the hole. The reason you like calcium is because it is going to help with the blossom end rot. Blossom end rot is right at the very end of the tomato's life, where it gets into it'll rot right on the edge of the tomato. So calcium deficiencies will cause that. So there's also another way that you can plant a tomato. And, studies have kind of shown that the other way that I'm going to do this is better than burying it in a hole. And I'll tell you why. One is, so they love warm soil. So you want your soil temperature to be 55 degrees or more when you get ready to plant. And we're talking not air temperature, we're talking about soil temp. So what you want to see is temperatures above 50 degrees in the evenings, and that's when it's a good time to plant the tomato. But tomatoes love warm soil, and so when we buried this deep in there, the soil down at the bottom of this hole is kind of cool. So one of the things that is that you can do is you can actually, they call this trenching the tomato. I am sometimes not always a big fan of this because it just feels weird to me, but studies have shown it's a better way to grow your tomato. So what you do is you dig a trench, and instead of putting your tomato in upright in a hole, you lay your tomato in. You still want to cut off your bottom leaves on your tomato. I'm going to feel bad because this might not be the tomato that's going in this hole. Sorry. And you basically turn this up and plant it. Now we all know that the tomato is going to want to grow upward anyway, so don't worry if it feels like it's crooked, that it's going to still grow upward. So what we've done is, so what makes this kind of interesting to me is knowing that tomatoes love warm soil is what's going to happen here is this, you've kept all the roots at a warmer spot in the soil, so it's going to actually warm up and grow faster. So that's something that you can do. Another tip is, let's just say you plant a little bit early and you have a frosty night coming. It's as simple as this. Go out and put a bucket over it. You know, I will say this, I would not waste any money on buying all these fancy contraptions that they put around these things so that you can grow it 2 weeks early. Because I promise, if I put this tomato in 2 weeks earlier and then I put another one in 2 weeks later in May, they're going to be the same height in July. It happens every time. So that's just a few tomato tips, and we'll have more coming up.